Good morning, everybody. I'm Nancy King with New View Marketing, and I'll be leading today's panel discussion, The Phenomenon of AR Gets Real, Entertainment, Advertising, Education, Gateway to the Future. Well, in the last year and a half, most of the applications we've seen out there for augmented reality have been entertainment-based, such as Pokemon Go or Snapchat. But the promise of augmented reality's use is not just in entertainment, but in many other industries, and it's now going mainstream. And the applications are creative, they're useful, and they're really impressive. So it's open season now for content producers to really brainstorm new ways to use this exciting platform and the underlying technologies that really make it all possible. So today we're going to explore where augmented reality is heading in entertainment and other industries, and I know you're going to be just as inspired as I am. We have a really exceptional panel today, all of them who are deeply immersed in the AR experience. So starting with Ashley at the other end, would you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your company and how you're involved in the augmented reality platform?
Yeah, so my name's Ashley Crowder. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ventana. We've built an augmented reality computing platform to easily create interactive 3D content with data collection. So we have patented hardware that projects holographic images, digital images into our environment. No need for wearables. You don't need a headset or holding up a phone. But our cloud platform allows us to easily create that interactive 3D content that could also be used on HoloLens or AR Toolkit. So great example for Lexus, we do hologram car configurators, so you can pick the color, the rims, the interior, see yourself in your hologram car. But then I know exactly what car you want, and we sync that with their CRM system. So we've more than doubled their qualified leads at all their sports activations. And that same hologram experience could be in HoloLens as well for a more personal experience. And we've got a video of something we've done for Nike. We do all types of product launches, and this was something really fun we did at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium.
First time ever, your uniforms for next Saturday. Let's get it. So, introducing the Lone Star Rangers.
They got really excited. When you see everyone has their phone out with Snapchat, we actually got that video from Twitter from one of the kids. So, you know, AR really has that ability to reach people's emotions, and that's what we find is so valuable for our brand clients.
Great, thank you. Jonathan.
Good morning. I'm with Otoy, which the easiest way to describe us is we have a pipeline that looks at the capturing, rendering, and streaming of advanced holographic media. So it's essentially an operating system that allows you to do the very deep and technical things that you require for augmented reality. We'll show you a small video that documents a little bit about our journey, and in particular, our founders.
Otoy is working on making holographic reality from the cloud practical and possible in anybody's hands. Otoy's role is to actually figure out the equivalent of the web for the metaverse and provide everything that it can need to sort of create and imagine what they want. Today we have this holographic technology, which is all about the efficient ways of pre-rendering every possible viewpoint, every way that light can interact and change, and giving you the agency to look around that thing, set to interact with it. Ultimately, a creator should be able to say, I have an idea where a truck is going through a forest and I don't think there's something here. There's going to be a point where you're not going to have a wand or a mouse that does this. You're going to think about it and it's going to happen. The cloud is also another important aspect of it because I don't feel that there needs to be a physical computer or device. The idea of this sort of metaverse is sort of an ethereal concept. The glasses that we're working with, these ODG glasses, allowed us to describe as something that I've never seen in any other device. Sure, they're a pair of sunglasses that have a form factor, and you can see the world around you, but we actually can filter that, so we can actually turn it into AR glasses just by changing all the pixels to black, and all of a sudden you're in a black room. The way that I imagine the story being told with our tools, and the ultimate endpoint is very much the way the children tell stories when they're playing with toys and they're actually doing this here. Every single person should have agency to create. And I feel if we do our jobs right, everyone with an idea is going to be able to render these. There won't be a learning curve because, frankly, the way that I think was always ideas. I mean, I had some concept in my mind, maybe it was innovative, but then I had to go learn how to code it, and then I had to figure out the technology. And what if, none of that was necessary? Every child with an idea could actually change the world. That would be something amazing, and if Otoy actually fulfills his mission, that would be awesome.
Impressive. That's my word for today, impressive. Thank you very much. Is there anything else you want to say?
Yep, my name is Neil Paris.
There's Neil.
I work at Google on the AR and VR content partnerships team, and I'm leading our efforts in the entertainment space. Kind of broadly where we sit across the AR/VR continuum is Google at a company level is thinking about the evolution of computing to be more immersive, where we started decades ago with inputs through punch cards, and then slightly more natural through the mouse and GUI, and then cell phones, and then the smartphone with pinch and zoom. Now we're heading into a phase that's going to be AI first, that is much more connected to how humans naturally communicate with each other is how we'll communicate with computing. So that's across audio, so computers understanding what we say, computers understanding what we see. So last week we announced something called Google Lens that is basically visual search, which allows you to use your phone's camera to understand what is around you in the world. So you see that plant, you hold up your phone, and it tells you what type of plant that is. And then so broadly, we're working in AR with a new API that's much like Apple's ARKit called AR Core, which is essentially going to enable an AR level across Android, and then giving the tools to our app developers to build amazing AR experiences at scale.
Thank you very much. Okay, Keith.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kiesel Jasek. I'm a Vice President of Emerging Technology at Digitas LBI. Digitas is a digital-centric advertising agency. We work with a lot of the companies, or would like to work with a lot of the companies that are up here on this panel. We work with Fortune 500 brands like American Express, PlayStation, Whirlpool, the list goes on, and really what our clients expect of us and what they ask us to bring them are these transformational technology-based ideas. And being a VP of tech, in emerging tech, what our company asks of us is to say, all right, what is coming up, what is emerging, what are our consumers and our audience going to interact with in the next year, 5 years, 10 years, help keep us on that roadmap and introduce us to companies like Ventana that are doing some incredible immersive technology, or partnering with Google on all the new technology that's being built into their phones that's going to scale out to hundreds of millions of users. So we stay up on the technology. We come up with cool ideas like they're showing right now, like the virtual reality kitchen of the future that we built for Whirlpool to visualize what your kitchen will look like in 5 years, and then we brought that to the CES audience in 2016. But yeah, we sit. We're very proud of sitting in the Magic Quadrant, and really just looking to stay there by being up on all the new and emerging technologies. And AR is incredible. It is probably one of the most transformative technologies, I think, in our lifetimes. And I always say it's inevitable. We'll all be using it. It's not a matter of if, but when.
Great, thank you. Arno.
I'm Arno Harthold, and I'm taking care of your audiovisual needs today. You're very welcome. I'm of the USC Institute for Creative Technologies, and we do basic research, applied research, and advanced prototypes, in particular interactive systems that can train, educate, and heal. A lot of work for the Army, a lot of work in healthcare, My background is computer science. I'm the director of R&D integration, so I align our research efforts with our application development efforts, in particular in the area of virtual humans. And you see here an example that we've been working on currently. Our focus is to create interactive characters that we can apply to a variety of different ways: interviewing people, helping people, training, education. What we're doing here is creating a middleware platform that targets multiple different platforms. So here you see iOS, Android, WebGL. We're moving on to VR. This is just an internal proof of concept. Thomas Jefferson, you walk into Monticello, you can talk to him, he can talk about objects in the environment. When you get close to him, you will have personal space, he will take a step back and you're like, whoa, dude. Next then obviously is AR. So Apple AR Kit, Google Android, AR Core. On the right here you see the HoloLens. What does it mean to create a character that you can place into a real environment? How do they navigate this world? How can they walk around these tables? How can they sit down in a chair? How do they interact with people? Those are all elements that we are exploring, both from a research and a prototype point of view.
Awesome.
Yep.
Ben?
Hi, my name is Ben Stein. I'm the general manager of 8i here in Los Angeles. We're focused on the volumetric capture, reconstruction, distribution, and playback of human holograms. So we're really focused on, this is just a quick photo of our stage. I'll play the video in a second because it leads to what we're working on right now. We have a stage here in Los Angeles with 41 cameras that's capturing a performance of a living human and turning that into a 3D volumetric asset. If you want to hit play on it real quick, I appreciate it. No problem. So it's very loud, so we're going to turn off the sound, I think. These are a couple videos that we created just for social media. But this is the MTV Moon Man from this year's VMAs. MTV worked with us to capture the Moon Man to put it in our augmented reality app called Holo. Holo is a use case of our technology that allows consumers to download our holograms and place them into the spaces where they and their friends are playing. You can then record videos and share them on any existing social platform. This is another just simple video of people using Holo. But at the end of the day, our company is not a single app. This app is a use case for that technology. Our assets work very well, virtual, augmented reality. We're excited about naked eye viewing of these assets in the future. And so we're sort of platform agnostic, but we're very focused on the human performance element.
Great. Thank you all. Great. So Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Google, they're all developing AR glasses while at the same time you've heard a little bit about some of the SDKs that are going on, AR Core for Android and Apple with their AR Kit. So the question is for you guys is how are you using both AR glasses and the SDKs in your business development? And maybe Neil, we could start with you for a little more background on the technology for the audience if they're not familiar on the two different platforms and how you'd use them.
Sure. Well, I touched on AR Core in the beginning. But one quick thing to point out is Keith mentioned it's not about if, but when. But I would argue that the when is now. With AR Core and AR Kit kind of providing an AR enabling layer across hundreds of millions of phones in 2017, it feels like the time is now that these AR use cases are going to really pop, and now it's just about who's going to build these incredible experiences. And so essentially what AR Core is, it's an AR API for Android that essentially puts tools that allow developers to create great AR experiences in their hands. So the three of things that it does in particular are it understands planes, so plane finds. So it enables you to understand where a table is or the floor so you can place objects in a very compelling way in the real world. Which also enables motion tracking, so you can walk around using your phone as kind of the magic window. You can walk around 3D objects, again, just increasing the reality of the experience. And then also lighting estimation, so the camera is able to understand shadows and light and then shade or brighten 3D objects in a scene, again, always to just make it more real feeling, and that makes the experience that much more compelling.
You're not going to tell us what you guys are doing with smart glasses?
What? Just kidding. No. I think as you touched on, the smart glasses and Google Glass is an enterprise function that's actually sits separate from our team.
Right. Jump in, anybody else? Keith, go ahead, or Ben, whatever, go
I
ahead.
mean, yeah, our assets are platform agnostic. We're definitely, they can play back on any of the headsets that are available right now. They can use Unity as a playback engine. They also work on some of the ones that aren't out yet, but will be coming out very soon, and we'll probably be talking about next year. SDKs are critical to our business. When Apple released ARKit and Google released ARCore, it allowed consumers to walk around the assets that totally transform the experience of someone seeing our assets and puts you in the same space with these people, whether they're dancing or telling a story or reading a poem, you're there with them. So for us, focused on people, the ability to walk up to them and walk around them, it was definitely transformative for our app and the people who are building using our SDK.
We have a duality in our institute. We're one of the few places where we do basic research as well as the application side. And on the research side, we're really looking into how can we drive the emergence of new technology. So we have a graphics lab headed up by Paul de Bevic earlier, now Hao Li, that's where the light stage got developed, which you saw in Jonathan's movie. We have a mixed reality lab where an early version of the Oculus Rift was developed and an early cardboard viewer. So we can push new technologies, but we're using that all as elements that we can combine in different ways. Everything we do is modular. So we can pick and choose these different capabilities and recombine them in different way. And I think that indeed SDKs are important, middleware is important. For every given job that you have, you want to look carefully at what are the requirements and what are the pieces that I want to pull together in order to get up and running as quickly as possible and in order to reach my target as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and at Ventana, we really look at building things in a modular way as well to make it as reusable as possible. And something today, you really need Unity developers or Unreal developers or game developers to create these types of experiences. And what we've realized is most of our clients don't have that capability in-house. So what we've done is we're creating this drag and drop system where you can easily create these interactive experiences for whether it's our hardware displays or other AR, VR devices where you don't necessarily need those developers and still have that data collection. Because for us, we've seen that the data at the end of the day, it's a really cool experience for someone, but what's the purpose? So we've basically created like APIs to easily sync with facial recognition so we can tell your emotions, age, and gender, and be able to have as many plugins as possible to AI as well that you mentioned.
Yeah, I think when we're talking about ARKit and ARCore, and those SDKs are really important. What in unison with that is the advances in the hardware as well. So we've got these great software development kits that we can build awesome AR experiences, but now we've got hardware that can power these, render in real time. And when you look at back to Digitas and how we apply that, I mean, we're looking for scale. So if we're going to go out and create this incredible immersive experience and bring it to a brand's audience, it's one thing to go activate it for maybe a couple thousand people, but what we really want to do is bring scale. So now you talk about ARKit and ARCore being built into most of our phones by the beginning of 2018. Now we've got hundreds of millions of devices out there that we can go bring these AR experiences to our audiences. That's incredibly powerful, and we didn't have that at the beginning of 2017.
So, as a show of hands, how many people here have tried AR or VR experiences? Pretty much everyone, right? Okay, cool. And I imagine that a lot of you guys have been pretty frustrated with some of the results, right? Because here's the issue. We have trained over the course of the last 100 years people to come to appreciate a certain language of cinema and television, right? Which is the apex of what we think of as like the highest quality form of visual image. And then now we have all these new emerging technologies are coming out, and you're looking at it and you say, hold on a second, let's take VR for a minute. VR on a mobile phone like this, in many cases, was looking worse than a PlayStation 1, right? You're like, wait a second, how could this be? We're so advanced in one way and so backwards in another. And so what we've been looking at Otoy is we've realized is that the pipeline that today that people have been using to get to this point, specifically for rendering, let's say, is not going to work. And we built from the ground up an entirely new platform that allows people to be able to marry what their real expectations are, which is cinematic photorealism, with interactivity, with augmented and virtual reality. And that took a whole class of new technologies that we created in order to make things look great. And with AR in particular, I think what you're going to see is not only a requirement for higher resolution, which I think everyone here who's looked at VR has wanted more and more, right? Getting rid of the screen door effect, getting higher quality interactive images. But AR adds an additional layer of requiring there to be actually the ability to relight objects, right? So if I have a virtual object which is sitting in this room, there's two lighting sources which are coming down here. There's the window, which sunlight is streaming in. And if that object is going to look realistic, I have to relight it. And so now you have an extra layer of complexity in terms of making this thing actually feel real and immersive. And at Otoy, we've anticipated a lot of these problems and have been working on it essentially since the company's founding, and trying to create a pipeline for the last 8 years that allows people to do things that achieve that level of immersion, realism that people want. So the stakes keep getting higher, the requirements keep getting higher, and consumers, they are uncompromising in their tastes, so we have to be there as well.
Well, and they're not powered by, this massive PC, right? Like we were doing with VR. They're powered by your phone in your pocket, which doesn't quite have the same computing power. So, I can only imagine that that's quite a challenge as well.
Are any of you guys working with the AR glasses, or is it mostly with the SDKs? Anybody
We
doing?
have a few projects that are going to live on AR glasses for sure. Yeah. But you're right. With reach, if you're a marketer or you're in advertising, you want to reach as many people as possible oftentimes. And unless you're going to do an activation at an event, the scale just is not there yet with most of those glasses, and it will be. So I think we'll all probably be, likely working with them in the future. But you can't ignore that there's hundreds of millions of phones out there. We need to get all our stuff working on mobile phones, and that's where we're seeing lots of the attention for our assets.
Right.
Yeah, I think the environment is what dictates what hardware you should use. So, HoloLens and Magic Leap are great individual experiences. They make total sense for training and kind of more work environments where people don't care if they're wearing something on their head, but I don't think anyone's going to wear a HoloLens to a football game anytime soon. So our hardware, which is no wearables, makes more sense for those public environments like malls, stadiums, casinos that we do, and then because it's that group experience. Whereas the phone is great, definitely gets you scale, and so that's why we build everything to be able to port to all three. So it doesn't really matter, what people want to use. Maybe they'll initially engage because they're like, holy crap, there's a digital car coming out of the floor, and then they're going to scan it with their phone and learn something new, and then post on social and get something out of it kind of across all platforms.
Yeah, I think the final delivery method is the final piece, but it is one piece. There's many different AI capabilities that go into for us driving these virtual humans, and those can all live, say, in the cloud. I think what's interesting then is, so as you can see in the movies, we have the same character that can be used and interacted with in different modalities. What you then need to look at is what does every platform give you in terms of affordances? Where do the strengths lie, and how do you explore what those strengths are? And for mobile, it's really always with you. It has sensors, it's personal. With AR, you can obviously lay it out in the real world. And that changes the interaction. The first time that I was in AR and VR and I get close to a character and they respond to me, it's a huge difference compared to even a screen that's right in front of you. And that's fascinating to explore all those differences.
So one pair of glasses, which are kind of a dark horse in this race, are the ODG glasses, which they have already had enterprise versions of these glasses that have been released for quite some time. And later this year, they're hoping to deliver the new R9s that they've been working on all of this year. And for us, in working with them, our friends at ODG totally blew us away. These devices are the first that we ever saw that eliminated the screen door effect. So if you're familiar with VR, there's kind of this view of how things look pixelated and almost as if you're staring through like a mosquito net or a screen door. These glasses, which have 2K in each eye, but unwarped, it's the equivalent of 6K in each eye. We were able to produce images there, just to give you an order of magnitude. A television screen typically is around 2K in resolution. We were rendering images for these glasses at 72K, right? Orders of magnitude more. And when you look into it, it's crystal clear. So we know that there is this huge and unfolding opportunity with AR, both in terms of wearables and then also these devices, which ultimately, because of that vast market, are going to get higher and higher quality and resolution. So we always knew this market would be bigger in AR, and I think now if you've stayed out of the VR piece, let's say, and you're just going to be first starting with AR, you're going to actually benefit because the technology is way more advanced and it looks phenomenal.
Great, thank you very much. Impressive, again, as I say, the word for today is impressive. We usually have a lot of content creators and producers in the audience. So from a storytelling perspective, what are some of the factors that content creators should be aware of when they're working in the medium of AR? And how does it differ from some of the traditional storytelling methods? Anybody?
I think Jonathan sort of jumped into it a little bit a minute ago. I mean, I think it's the sense of agency, right, versus all of these things that were established with 2D and even 3D linear content in the past is changing when the consumer gets to move. And so, you have to play into that. It's something that a lot of the creators we're working with are figuring out new ways to sort of play with the movement of the person, whether it's on a phone, and we're sort of getting some early spatial analytics with our app around how people are moving around our existing assets. It's definitely early days on that, but yeah, I mean, I think that the ability for the consumer to be more a part of that storytelling and make more decisions there is one of the bigger differences for sure.
And one thing we announced last week at our hardware event were AR stickers, which combines a lot of the thinking that everyone's talking about up here. Essentially, it's characters and objects in 3D that are part of your camera Pixel phone that you can drop into a scene, and they understand where you are in relation to them. So the example we showed on stage was a demo that we did with Stranger Things, Netflix's show. We put a Demogorgon, which is the monster, basically into the real world, and as you approach it, it lashes out at you. And then you can put a second character from the AR sticker pack into the scene, which is 11, another character. She recognizes that there's another 3D object in the scene and actually vanquishes, basically makes the Demogorgon disappear. And it's an incredibly cool kind of storytelling mechanism that you would then save to your camera roll and share wherever you share.
And I love that you mentioned, we've had 100 years of being trained to watch cinema. So we're sitting in a chair and we're passively watching. Whereas, when we started messing around with VR and we'd have a noise, we thought, okay, if we put a noise behind them like this, they're going to turn and look. But nobody did. Because we've been trained to sit and watch in front of us, and we've ruined thousands of years of Darwinism to train us. If there's a noise behind us, turn around and look at what's happening. So it's been really interesting to see, kids come up and do our experience, and they're much more intuitive, and they immediately understand what to do. We did you could throw a ball to Roger Federer's hologram, and every kid immediately knew what to do and easily did it. Whereas, the older population, we had to explain more times because they've been trained in one way with entertainment and visuals, and it's kind of a retraining. So it's been really interesting to experiment with those user experiences and how you build something that's as intuitive as possible for all ages.
There's been a lot of work in games, though, in interactive narrative and how you can craft a story and how you can give a user or a gamer agency. And the games most people know is just running around and shooting, but there are many games that are more focused on the interactivity of it, including characters that you can respond back to you. That's partly an game industry area that's being explored. There's a lot of academic research there as well. It gets into the AI, not just some of the AI that we know, but conversational AI. How can we create characters that are compelling, that are consistent, that have choices, that give the user agency and choices so that you can have an interplay between those entities? What AR adds to that is obviously the localization and the interactivity within a shared space.
Yeah, I think that a couple things for storytellers to keep in mind. One, I don't think we all want to have every AR experience in our home. It'll get boring to fight hallway battles against, virtual characters. It's still just your home and you live there. So I think getting people out into the real world, and I think Pokemon Go, even though I have a real hard time saying that it's actual AR, got people out and moving to places. And I think that's going to be great for storytellers to say, let's pick a place and drive people there and give them experience at that place that's contextual to where they are. So it can be a park, or it can be a retailer, or something like that. I think we'll just get bored having all these AR experiences in our home. So I would look to get them out and about, or activate them somewhere, tell a story about where they are. I also think that it absolutely has to be interactive, because like you mentioned, we can all sit home and watch a sort of dumb movie that doesn't interact with us at home, and that's an entirely different medium. But if you're not interacting with the person or the environment around them, then I think you've just got kind of like a signpost up that's not very interactive.
So I think the opportunity on interaction is great, and clearly the new thing that all these platforms are adding. I come from a traditional cinema and television background. Having worked in technology and film, kind of straddling the two, I'm a partisan to almost like the oldest part of our film industry. If I have my choice, I'll go to Quentin's Theater on Beverly and watch it in 35, right? Here's the thing. With these new technologies, I think the biggest problem is people throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And I work for arguably one of the most innovative companies in the space, and yet we still want to work with some of the most established traditional storytellers. And here's why. We think that there's a difference between, in this new area, two types of storytelling. One is interactive storytelling. So that's where I see the character, he's running through my hallway, I'm poking the character, it responds back to me. Completely interactive, and as a user or an audience member, I have an infinity of choices, right? I can go anywhere, I can do anything with this creature. But the other form of storytelling is immersive storytelling. Think of it like the equivalent of an IMAX, where you're sitting there and you're just completely engrossed in the experience, but it is a single experience. It takes a director and a very clear point of view and a path that the director is guiding you on. And from our perspective, both types of storytelling are essential to the success of this medium. You want things which are interactive, which give users a lot of choice, but you also don't want to forget about the immersive experience, one that is directed and guides people along the way. Because at the end of the day, you still have the basics of storytelling, which are a beginning, middle, and end. And our best projects, the ones that have succeeded creatively and really resonated with audiences, has been able to kind of give them a healthy mix of both. So for the folks in the audience who are in the traditional realm and looking to get into things like AR, you are well equipped. The things that you are very good at today are still incredibly relevant. So even on the bleeding edge where we're at, we like to remind people that it's a journey and we're all in it together, and we should write the rules together as well.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you very much. We're just going to hold the questions to the end, okay, guys? I will leave enough time so you guys can have questions. You guys showed us a little bit of the work that you're doing with some of your clients, but I think the audience would probably really love to hear some more interesting stories about how you're using AR with your clients. If you have another example you can share with us, or something interesting to pique their creative juices.
We're about to start a new project with the police department doing de-escalation of violence. We'll start with VR and we're exploring AR. So police comes into a home, people are fighting, there's a tense situation. How do you deal with that? And how can we train our police officers to deal with it in a way that best resolves the tension in the situation? So that can happen with role players right now, but role players are inconsistent, they're expensive, there's a lot of turnover, they're not always available. Virtual humans, as I showed the example, can help augment that training. You could even have a mix between real role players and virtual role players when you use augmented reality. So you put the AI in the real people, but you can augment that with secondary characters that you can control based on how the officer is doing, based on their level, based on where they are in the training.
Awesome.
Yeah, we just 2 weeks ago launched the first responsive AI hologram. So we've combined facial recognition with AI, and we created a digital 3D face that'll automatically respond appropriately. So we're starting to replace those information desks in malls and stadiums. And if you come up and you're distressed and you're upset, we can recognize that emotion, and our hologram is going to respond very calming, might ask for help, can immediately call security through the cloud platform. Or if you're happy and excited, the hologram will respond in a happy and excited way to really make it much more like a human-to-human interaction. So it's fun, and that's really what we're excited about, because it's the interactive that makes it fun for people, and it's the more intuitive that can be, the more people are going to use it, and the more data that we can track, and the better it can be in the end.
Great. Anybody else want to add it?
Just one great thing that we're working on that we're really excited about that we hope we can work on with everyone on the panel is the connection of all these different 3D assets. So on our platform, we're able to render out all of these different experiences, but once they're out there in the world, what we want to be able to do is ensure that people are able to actually have the objects interact with each other, and think of it a little bit like the World Wide Web. The idea is that we want all of these holographic assets out there to be, in a sense, registered through a system that will allow them to be accessible by anyone, and then for you to mix and match these two. So as things are progressing now, we're kind of seeing the emergence of the new internet that is essentially the holographic internet, where you have all of these different assets that you're able to combine and interact and trade with. So as a company whose name is Otoy, we're starting with toys, because our founder isn't particularly fond of them. But we think that this is actually really essential to being able to create the type of collaboration and ultimately the success of these things, that they're not just kind of set aside as separate applications that can't talk to each other, but actually each asset themselves being able to mix and match between them. So your example with Stranger Things, the cool thing that I'd want to do as a kid is I'd want to be able to play with this, is it the Demogorgon? To be able to kind of match it with, I don't know, my G.I. Joe, right? And be able to fight it, obviously. So things like that, is a very natural user aspiration, and we want to make sure that underlining everything that we do, we make sure that that happens, that people are not locked into these types of proprietary systems. So for us, an open metaverse is really critical as we're creating this new space, and we're doing our part with all the tools we're creating and the partnerships to make sure that happens.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the holographic internet. I love that reference. And when we think about brands and we think about their space in augmented reality, artificial intelligence, we're really pushing our clients and the brands we work with to become more contextual, to become a contextual brand. And what that means is that your product in the real world is an entry point into your brand. So think of a Coke can. Before we had AI and augmented reality, that's a Coke can, that's all it's able to do. But now with augmented reality, with some artificial intelligence layered on top, that can be an entry point into your brand. So it can activate an experience, it can be a contextual marker to help us understand. I think, we look at Whirlpool, right? You've got washers and dryers, you've got refrigerators, and all of those are gonna have to have a support for augmented reality and artificial intelligence, because we're gonna expect more out of that real product. I need to understand what size is it? What are the features inside? All these things need to be contextualized and outside, disconnected from the internet, right? I can do a Google search now, but I need something like a Google Lens to be able to give me that next level of interactivity. So becoming a contextual brand, not only is that a utility, right? I can learn about the product, but it's also a point of entry for entertainment or gamification. So I can take that Coke can and have that start an interactive experience. And both are really powerful.
And then just touching on what everyone here is saying, scale is obviously very important, and for Google in particular, part of what we do is try to create a platform and services to enable a lot of these experiences. One of the things that was announced at Google I/O was something called VPS, which is basically indoor mapping, and that uses camera on a phone with depth sensing to kind of understand an indoor space. And what that allows you to do then is create augmented experiences at a very precise, in a very precise way. The example was Lowe's. So you're searching for something that you're going to find at Lowe's. And previously, your phone could get you to the front door of Lowe's, but then you have 30, aisles to walk down to try to find what you're looking for. Now it can take you right to the actual space within the size of a golf ball of where that product would be.
Wow.
And then imagine if a hologram pops up and gives you more information about that thing that you're trying to buy.
Awesome. All right, great. There's probably some brand people in here too, so what would be your best advice to give to brand people who are considering getting into AR or VR? What do they need to do to really get it right?
I'll jump in because I'm the brand guy. But I look at it like this. Think of it as the year 1997, and your ad agency said, you need a website. And you said, what's a website, maybe? We're almost at that exact same point right now where, even though all the technology around augmented reality isn't mature, we haven't connected all of the dots, there's not necessarily this infrastructure in place to power every possible interactive moment you'd want to have. But would you have wanted to start building that website in 1997 or 2007? And I think I look at it very similarly right now to AR. Now's the time as a brand to start thinking about your augmented reality strategy, because you're going to evolve that over the next year, 5 years, 10 years. And you don't want to be playing catch up, because there's going to be all these, your competitors are going to be going out, creating augmented reality experiences, learning from what worked, what didn't, partnering with people like Otoy, Ventana, Google, and really forging all those partnerships. And that's going to be really sticky for as millennials, get out into the marketplace. They become wealthier. They're able to go out and buy more products. They expect these digital experiences around your brand. So start now. It's 97.
I love that you said that, because we have so many agencies and brands that come to us that say, I don't know, they said they have to do AR. So, okay, we can help you with that, but what's the goal? So that's our first question. What is your goal as a brand or an agency? Is it getting more social media content? So let's think about something that we can create a really shareable moment. So, we did something where you got to see yourself and you morphed into a werewolf for MTV, which is cool. Or is it a product launch and it's a very complicated product and you want to teach your consumers about it, but in a fun way with 3D AR? So that's always our question is what's that goal? And then we can help you design that AR experience to reach that goal.
I'd add one thing which to kind of build on the goal is don't look at these things as extensions. AR and VR, if it really is going to work, has to be kind of core to what you actually are doing in your main campaign or in your main objectives. I think a lot of times where people get things wrong, and we saw this happen with digital, is how many companies said, well, for my social media strategy, I'm going to go and hire an intern, right? And that doesn't work.
Or post my TV commercial on
right.
Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. And that, is just really, sure, you want to involve young people who may be closer to this, but at the end of the day, if it's not in service of the main goal and what you're trying to do, that just isn't, it isn't a viable strategy. What we see often also in, with respect to storytelling, which can relate to brands, is that oftentimes a lot of digital efforts of this kind come in way too late in the cycle. So I'd say also fight to get this type of conversation started early, because if you're able to go and give enough oxygen into the type of campaign that you need, then it's not going to be just something which, throw an AR component on it at the end of a year worth of work. That's impossible to do with the current state of technology if you want to do it well. So stand tall, to commit, say this is something you want to do, and include it as a key part of the discussion as opposed to just making it an afterthought.
Yeah, and I would say dive in. Everyone has a phone. Download a bunch of apps and start playing with it. See what you like and don't like about those apps or those experiences, and it's the best way. It's the best way to see what's happening in this space.
Would a brand need anybody specific working in their group to do this, or would it all be a hire out to agencies and so forth?
Sometimes we wish they had someone specific who understood this, but oftentimes they don't. So, I think it's not that mature yet. Some of the bigger agencies clearly probably do have folks who are focused on AR, VR, and things like that. Most of the brands that we're working with, although there are some very forward-thinking brands, we're working with a ferry company that wants to do augmented reality, and that might not be the first place you think of augmented reality appearing, but when we think about a specific location, they know the shape of their boats. There's a lot of and there's some downtime on ferries. There's a lot of interesting things that can happen there. So, and they actually have someone whose job is full-time to focus on augmented reality on their boats. So it's possible, but I wouldn't say it's required.
Yeah, and one thing we're doing just proactively is going out to our clients and just educating them on the basics of what augmented reality is and what's possible. They may have an idea that that looks maybe more like Minority Report or the playtest episode of Black Mirror, and we really need to ground them in, okay, no, here's where we're at right now. This is what augmented reality is now. Here's where you can activate the channels. Here's some of the great partners in the scene, and then where it's going, so what we can build on. And even if they didn't ask for it, we're trying to get out and educate them on the technology because we think it's so powerful.
That's great. What's going on internationally? China, India, with augmented reality, virtual reality, where do we kind of stand versus what's going on in the world?
I mean, the only data we have is the Holo app that we released. It's a consumer app, and we've seen significant downloads in both China and India that are interestingly platform specific. So in
India, consumers using them?
Consumers, thank you. Yeah, consumers. Yeah, so lots of, and we only have a small amount of content that's targeted towards those audiences, and those audiences are very receptive to that content, but they seem to be enjoying all the other content. We have, I can say nearly as many downloads in those two countries as we have in the States.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of work, specifically in China. We just did an installation with Cisco in partnership with the central government for what new future smart cities will look like. And so it's a whole showroom. Our holograms are part of it, also our AR platform with other devices. And it's really exciting. Like the government's investing in this technology and using it to think about how they design these future cities they're building, which is really exciting. So China is a huge market for us. We've also done work in Taiwan, Korea, and we're excited to start doing India, but haven't done that yet.
So most of the societies that you look at that really where you see the biggest transformation with technology are the ones that essentially leapfrog, right? So if you think of India, they went from 1G to 3G, right? They completely skipped over landlines, for example, within their homes, and they went from just a common telephone in a village all the way up to a shepherd having a cell phone. AR actually has that opportunity as well, and what we're particularly excited about is the idea that in households that have basically they're shared households where you have multiple generations living in the same household, or you have basically out of current socioeconomic standings a jammed kind of household. That's where a variety of these technologies actually make a big difference, because they'd allow people, especially through their mobile phone, to be able to go and kind of carve out their own experiences and their own identity. And you also can find something which is interesting, which is they've skipped ahead in ways that we may not even be aware of. WeChat, for example, produced hundreds of millions of dollars as early as 10 years ago on the basis of virtual goods. Right, so my avatar within WeChat was something that I could actually kit out with like a Gucci watch and whatever else I may want. And that's something that's innate to those cultures. So what you may find is not just that these people have a willingness to do it, but they actually may have been much farther down the road than we think. So the rubber will hit the road there, arguably far faster in Asia than it will here. So that's exciting and shouldn't be missed.
I think it's great that Apple and Google, since a lot of what they're doing is distributed through their app stores, is all available worldwide. And Facebook too, they've launched their Camera Effects platform. Those are all, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
Immediately available worldwide. So as a content creator, maybe working with an app developer, you can build that experience and you can launch it worldwide simultaneously. That's incredible, and really helps us reach that scale.
Any other thoughts on that? Okay. This question's for Arno. It's about providing safe environments for the AR, VR experience. You know, you've heard a lot of Pokemon Go, do not trespass and watch where you're going when you're crossing the street kind of things. But I just want to throw that out there if anybody wants to comment on that, because whose responsibility is it to keep people safe? Is it the producer's responsibility? Is it the individual's responsibility? I just throw that out there.
It's a topic that I find fascinating and I don't have a good answer for. But I want to bring it up because especially in the group of people like these panelists that are evangelists of AR and VR, and it's amazing and it's great. And I mentioned before the first time that I was face to face and eye to eye with a virtual human in virtual reality, you have a connection there. You see something that affects you in a way that's different than other media has affected you. And because that is the case, and because we don't quite know yet why it is the case, and how our bodies and our mind responds to these different interactive elements, very similar as real life, there's a power there that we need to be wary of how we use it. Now, on our end, we work a lot with the military, we work a lot with healthcare. We use AR and VR to treat people. So obviously there we're looking into what can we do, what can we not do. We do a lot of clinical trials. But I think it goes beyond that. And there's a certain responsibility. And on the one hand saying this is a very new and powerful medium. If we believe that, then we also need to make sure that we use it in ways that we think are safe.
All right. Any other thoughts, comments? Take care of that? No?
I just think that we need to be respectful to human behavior and what people are willing to do within these experiences, because just because we can create any experience and take you here and take you there, make you jump over this thing, that doesn't necessarily mean we should. We're still humans and we still have a point to where we want to interact with something or we don't. So I would just say we're going to learn a lot, I think, over the next year, 2 years, how people use these AR experiences, how far we're willing to push them, what they're willing to do. And I think I would keep an eye on that, because you can build this incredible experience, and if it's just too complex or isn't natural to me as a human, I'm not going to do it. So I would just keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I'd say the responsibility, please. I'd say the responsibility is shared. I think that it's critical that the producers are paying attention to how people are going to use what they're creating, but you have to, as a user of these experiences, just like any other medium, you have to be conscious of what you're doing, whether it's walking into a street or spending 12 hours in a VR headset and getting somewhere psychologically where you shouldn't be. So I think absolutely it's our responsibility to keep an eye on it. It's also shared with the user.
Yeah, and we in particular deal with a whole nother interesting moral question of, we get asked all the time to create a digital resurrection, someone who's already dead, whether it's for a family member or someone famous. So today we have the ability to use machine learning. I can look at all of your emails, your text messages, interviews. I can train an AI to talk like you. I can make a digital face that looks like you, and I can recreate you as a hologram to respond to someone. That ability is here today, but morally, does that make sense? Did someone who's deceased never even thought this would be a possibility? So those are where I find the really interesting questions coming of who has the power to say, yes, that's okay to do this for a deceased person or not.
Okay. Those are great questions, and I'm, again, impressed with the technology and where it's going. In fact, last 6 months ago when I did this panel, it was really about the tipping point of augmented reality. And here we are 6 months later, and I thought, okay, it's mainstream now. Look what's going on. When I talked to everybody in the panel first. But I don't know, are we still at a tipping point, or are we into mainstream? And I'm combining that with the question of, really what excites you about the future of augmented reality? What is just compelling forward, and how do we get the audience excited in it? So what do you guys think? What's the future and the excitement of the future for it?
I think it's where I started, which is around immersive computing and the ability to interact with technology in a way that's more natural. I think, like I mentioned, what Google Lens is doing, allowing you to kind of understand your environment, or we also just announced earbuds that essentially can do real-time translation between people. So all of this stuff is basically taking us out of the unnatural, looking down at your phone, walking forward with your head down, and allowing you to kind of interact with computers in a very organic way.
So we, a while back, did a study. We took a virtual human interviewing people who may be depressed, who may have PTSD. And what we learned is that, especially in an army context where there's a lot of stigma about talking about mental health issues, people were willing to self-disclose more information about their mental health issues if they talk to this virtual human compared to talking to a real human, but also compared to filling in an anonymous questionnaire. And what we anecdotally got back from that was people said they felt less judged. They felt more at ease. They knew it was a computer. They knew it wasn't a real human being, but it was still this natural way of interacting. So in a way, we looked into the best of both worlds. So what's exciting to me about that is that it's a new way to interact with technology. And I think you see examples here and in other places as well. To give a more human face to technology and to allow people to interact with technology more naturally, that allows them to, allows us to treat them better, allows you to get information more easily. As a brand, it allows you to get information more easily. So I think they're very exciting opportunities to use virtual humans in that sense, no matter what the medium is. But as we said, augmented reality gives extra dimensions to that because you can combine it with a lot of different ways that are relevant for you or relevant for the user in the shared space.
Yeah, I don't think we're at a tipping point yet. I think that.
Wait, you think we're at a tipping point or a mainstream? One of the two.
Well,
not even?
Not even tipping point.
I don't even think we're really at the tipping point because to me, I think we're still in trial, right? For the majority of people out there, they're going to be trying an augmented reality experience for the first time and may put that down and not even try it again for another 18 months. So I think that first we've got to get trial, okay? We've got to get everybody to try that first thing, whatever it is, and then we've got to get into usage, and then we got to see that daily usage start to rise. We're not even talking about daily usage yet. So, I still think we're at trial, we're very early. The tipping point, I mean, the two big, Google and Apple having these scalable platforms out there is huge for trial. But 2018 is all trial to me. And then in maybe 2019, we'll be talking about mainstream.
And I would say, I don't think people, people in this room are talking about augmented reality. We work in augmented reality. I don't think consumers are going to say, now I use augmented reality. I think they're using it every day with Snapchat lenses. I think that they're using AI and machine learning in ways that they have no idea how it's working, and that's okay. But it's making their lives better. And I think that, like Neil said, this immersive computing is what people are going to start to see and feel in their lives. And I agree, there's some of the apps for sure that will take time to sort of, to become common daily use cases. But I think it's something that's here. I think it's something that's still emerging at the same time. And it's about how these 3D assets are going to become a part of our daily life in a more impactful way.
Yeah, it's the democratization of the actual authorship that we think is going to really take this to the next level, and that's what we're the most excited about. I mean, the top-down approach, certainly you want benchmark cases, big brands, big directors, big experiences happening, but what's going to be amazing is when people are actually going to be able to, on their own, individual consumers will be able to author this type of stuff and have it interact with the stuff that the big brands or the big producers are doing. And so to that end, we've been working really hard to be able to do this and taking the most powerful technology that we have and embedding it within the types of authoring platforms that many developers use. This year we announced an integration where we're taking not just our rendering engine, but even Lightfield streaming, which is a key part of the development path for AR, and embedding that type of functionality inside of the Unity gaming engine, which has over 7 million developers worldwide. That's the type of thing that when you're going to see really, you were looking for really a tipping point, it's getting things out of the domain of something that's very locked down, like a Snapchat lens, which I don't think it's necessarily making people's lives better.
I agree. But people are using it.
But they're using it. No doubt. It's a training, right? But the idea is that if I actually, as an individual creator, can now go in and engage with that type of content, me personally as a consumer, and I can start to shape all the different things I want around it. That's the point in which I think the metric where we say, okay, now it's truly mainstream and in the hands of everybody, and that will require, because of what we all know as the really deep and important needs that we have is to like create beautiful quality, that is going to require some really serious technology. And Google and Apple and Facebook are really marching this along, but many people on this panel are playing a part in that as well. So I would stay tuned for the democratization.
Yeah, I think entertainment's an easy first use case, but even Goldman Sachs released a study last year saying they think AR is going to be a $10 billion market by 2025. That's not that far away. And it's when it can become a utility, not just entertainment, because putting the digital in the real world gives us seamless access to data that we could never have before. It's going to change our lives as much as our cell phone changed our lives, with being able to easily Google directions and call someone at any time. It's going to be that big of a leap to how more efficient we can be. So I'm so excited for that aspect. But it starts with the entertainment and getting people excited, and then it moves into the training and use cases and amazing military cases that ICT is doing. So yeah, it's just the beginning.
Great, I love it. All right, now we can open it up to questions. And this lady right here in the front, you had a question earlier. Do you still want to ask your question?
Different question. You answered a lot of it.
Okay.
I'm fascinated how brands will embrace this whole new evolution. And it is reminding me of how digital came into marketing campaigns for brands. And I love the fact that you said it should be a part of our whole overall marketing strategy. You know it's not going to be. It's going to say, we need to have AR as part of this, and they have no idea what they're talking about or doing. So I'm just curious how brands are embracing this. I'm wondering, Keith, if you have some examples of something you can talk about how brand embraced AR and how it's part of an advertising campaign, and then how does it reach massive people on a mobile device or however else you're pushing it out to social.
I'm searching my brain for a good example. Maybe someone
I can share.
has one.
I've got one. So that's happens to us all the time, and we want to make sure like whatever we do is successful. So we'll help brainstorm. So for Rob Thomas, for example, he couldn't do a meet and greet at most shows, so we did hologram karaoke. Super fun. You got to see your hologram with his hologram, sing, got a video that looked like you performed on stage. That's really fun, but we wanted to make sure that lived on besides just that one event. So leading up to a show, we helped do a press release. It was the first ever hologram karaoke, and he talks about it on radio. And people actually paid $100 to go do this. So people were paying money because they got so excited because they heard about this new great thing that had never been done before. And then we did a competition. So who has the best hologram karaoke, who gets the most likes and shares on social media is going to get featured on Rob Thomas's Facebook page and website. So there was actually a competition and reason to share that and perpetuate with your friends after. So he ended up getting, over 65,000 video views of something. So it's not just the event, but it lived on long after that. So, we try and help. We're not an agency, and we work with some agencies that are great, like Digitas, that think about this. But if we're working direct with a brand who maybe doesn't have that support, we're trying to make sure that we'll help come up with that campaign to make sure it's successful.
Anybody, did you want to add something into
That's
that? Okay, all right.
Great
Sir,
answer.
over here.
So I've been producing and shooting 360 VR ringless video media for about 3.5 years now, and inevitably I get a call from a company and they say, we want to do 360, what does it cost? And I go, what's your budget? And they're like, we don't have a budget. So I'm going to ask you the same stupid question. What does it cost to do an AR project?
It really depends on the scope. I mean, it's the same answer that you give your clients. I mean, do they want a 1-second 360 video that is in your house, or do they want to go to Bali and shoot a movie? You know what I mean? It really depends on the scope of the project. I think if we're building someone a bespoke app, that can obviously carry significant costs. We have a production stage that has specific fixed costs associated with shooting on that stage, which I'm happy to talk about with you after the fact if you'd like to discuss. But yeah, I think these sorts of projects are in many ways even more complex to scope than a 360 video because it requires development time, it requires integration into existing apps, as well as creating these assets.
Yeah, we're not really at the point yet where we can commoditize it. So, right now, if you said, all right, how much is a Facebook campaign going to be, or a sponsored post campaign. Like, we've commoditized that. We know what it is. We've got a history of creating that content, and I can go in and say, well, based on what we've done in the past, something like that would look like this. Throw in a couple of variables on top and equals X.
It's not $100. Do you have any ranges you can throw out? Is it you can't get into this for less than 10,000? Is it going to be 50,000, 100,000?
The content creation and the ability to create this right now is complex. Okay, and there's low complexity and there's really high complexity. But even the low complexity, I would say you're looking into, I would say 6 figures is a good place to start.
Thank you for saying something. I appreciate that. On behalf
we can
of
do
all the
something
brands.
for a little less,
Yeah,
but
we
not.
can do less.
I mean, you're gonna start at 6 figures, yeah, and go up from there.
I got a 360 camera for my Pixel phone. It's $125, but if you want professional quality, it's a good question.
Absolutely.
Right, okay. Yes,
Yeah.
You mentioned digital holographic humans. Can you do digital holographic animals? Because I'm seeing a whole potential market for holographic zoos or SeaWorld, possibility of education without harming and endangering animals.
Yeah, we've done a hologram panda for Huawei for an event for them. That was really cool. So yeah, animals are definitely possible, and that's what's exciting, right? Like we can do an experience where you can see your hologram live with a hologram shark swimming around you, and give you these experiences that, it's not replacing that zoo necessarily, but it's giving you an experience you could never have before, and that's what we get. So you could swim with sharks, or pet the panda bear like we did for that company. It's really exciting.
Yeah, that's the same. Our stage is focused around the capture of humans, but it's really living objects. So we'd capture animals as well, and in the Holo app that we have, there's some of our most popular characters, as you might expect, is a llama, a bear.
How about a cat? Can you have a holographic?
It can be a dragon flying,
Yeah,
breathing
anything.
fire.
Did
It
you
can
say
be
a cat?
anything, yeah.
only if you can hurt it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holographic cat.
Yeah. Like a nano pet, but hologram, yeah.
Very possible.
And we're hoping to work with 8i with some of their content, so.
Good thing is, it's only 6 figures.
Yeah.
Question
6
in the
figures if you
back.
want to
Real
build the
fake
cat.
cat.
If you want to build the cat platform, it's 6 figures, not for each user.
Talking about cats is always more important. No, I have a question about what the panel thinks about augmented reality form factors. We touched on holograms. There's sort of an implicit reference to AR Core and AR Kit, and using your phone to augment reality. But what do people think about headwear, glasses, etc., things that are out there now, like HoloLens, Meta, ODG, stuff like that, and where we think augmented reality is kind of going to land and stabilize going forward. Is it a multitude of these different platforms? Maybe the answer is really simple, but I'm curious specifically what you think about it and augmented reality.
Well, I just want to say real quick, we kind of touched on that earlier in the panel, but if anybody else wants to jump in and talk about it a little
The
bit.
only extra point that I would say is that it does seem inevitable that glasses will be the common way in which you interact with both your computer and the real world. So the phone is just the first step. It's getting you used to the use cases. It's helping developers figure out what people want. And then eventually, when the technology is small enough and good enough, you'll be able to wear it.
So we've seen a lot of great results with what's called pass-through AR, in which you have basically a video feed and you're compositing stuff within that. And that is ultimately what's going on when you're doing AR within a device like this. And we've always really believed that's going to be the very first successful way of doing AR. I think a lot of people are focused on kind of compositing with a variety of kind of mirror techniques, or maybe if magically has some product at some point, they may be able to do it. But the truth of the matter is that we've talked a lot about scale on this panel, and there's no question that pass-through AR is going to be the one that's at scale. And so the real goal that we see is knowing that we have the hardware fixed, essentially, right, phones. Can you deliver really high-quality experiences to those? And that's why we focused on not only advanced really, really detailed photorealistic imaging, but also streaming those so that you can offload a lot of the processing power away from the phone, which can overheat, doesn't have a great battery, into something in the cloud that is just then in a very lightweight way streaming down. So I'd say those would be the areas I'd focus on for really successful AR, pass-through, and streaming experiences.
Is that going to be a little, like 6 months from now, a year from now, where you're getting to that point?
We've demonstrated a number of these solutions already over the last 2 years at least. The technology is there, for sure.
One point, just I think the mass adoption of glasses, augmented reality powered glasses, is going to be a really, really difficult hurdle to overcome, because when we went from PCs and laptops to smartphones, I mean, that just seemed like a natural, right? Great, everything I could do on the PC, I can just do it in a smaller form factor. It fits in my pocket. My life is not interrupted. When we talk about putting glasses on your face, you know, I don't wear glasses. A lot of people, it looks like in the audience, don't wear glasses. Now you're asking me to alter what I do day in, day out, how I see everything. And I think it will happen. It's just going to have to be really great to really turn that tide to get mass adoption.
I think we'll start. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, you know, I was at AWE, which is an augmented reality conference in Silicon Valley, and there was one person wearing a headset. And everyone there looked at him like he was crazy. And this is an AR conference in Silicon Valley. So, you know, people just aren't comfortable yet, to your point. And I think the device depends on the situation. So the standalone hardware to project holograms in public spaces, the headsets still work great for workplace. And you mentioned light field technology. I mean, light field technology, that's what I'm super excited about, because that's going to just get rid of all of this, and we'll have, you know, Princess Leia available to us. But that, you know, is a ways away. So this is kind of, we require this third eye in which to view the world through to overlay that digital, and it just depends on the environment.
All right.
I think it will start in certain industries, construction, medical, really specialists who get something out of it. And then it may move on at some point. It will get small enough, right? And at some point, you know, I do wear glasses. At some point, I will get the ability to do something really, really cool that you guys can't. And my life will be amazingly better, so who knows? But I do think it will take...
Probably already is.
Maybe. But it will take a while, and indeed, it is more invasive.
Okay, last question. We're running out of time. Gentleman right here with the checkered shirt.
Am I understanding correctly that the principal method of use today for ARKit and ARCore is what I'm seeing with Snap and these demos I've seen, where I have to hold the phone so that I'm looking in the camera view and I'm experiencing AR because there's some object that's rendering in my camera view. And so what that implies, we're saying we don't want to wear glasses because that's change of behavior, but it implies this behavior where I'm going to sit here and hold my phone in some way that I'm both creating the experience by holding it and capturing the camera view and watching the experience while it's being rendered. Totally, I don't get it. That seems to me that we're at some early primitive way of saying we can do AR, but I don't get where that becomes a scalable, interesting content experience, because I can do an AR object or lenses or filters or whatever in that. Am I missing something? How do we get from what I see at the USC integrated, you know, creative program, and I would see these completely immersive, fully fixed, rendered environments, or what we could have imagined in the VR headset world if it was tolerable, to where this is a rich media experience?
Well, it already is for people who are social media consumers. So they are trained on selfies and filming all the content that they see, filming their daily lives, telling Snapchat stories, Instagram stories, all of that. So I think in social media, you know, and social media stars or people who consume that kind of thing, that is natural for them, is to interact with their world through the lens of their camera. And augmented reality adds an additional level of interactivity and content creation to that. And I think so for those people, and maybe it's not necessarily the folks in the room, but just that social media content creation and the new tips and tricks and everything you can do in Facebook and Snapchat, that very much is a real for them.
Let me just, I'm sorry, go ahead. No, we're hitting a little time crunch here. We just got the big signal in the back. So, Jonathan, did you want to just, I could see you wanted to add one last thing in, and then we're going to cut it off and give our claps to our
I just want to help you
panel.
because I actually respect the assumption that you don't sit there and take selfies of yourself all day, so that's really cool. I think that the idea is you really want to look at the relationship between the object and its environment. So what you're missing is that the compositing of whatever object that's there, if it actually meaningfully interacts with the environment, that's where you're going to get something where you're going to forget about what you're holding. Utility is Ashley mentioned is a really good point. If I want to figure out how to fix something like a pipe or something that's in my house, the ability to actually go and have now the photo that's there and then have instructions which are layered upon that that tell me, look, this object, fix it in this way. I'm not thinking about the position of my camera, I'm thinking about how useful this is, right? So I think that is a really important part of this, and as we get into storytelling, a lot of people have talked about it before, but I think location-based storytelling or something that kind of is true interaction between the real world and the augmented world, that's going to be the killer app, and that will allow everyone to use it, not just people.
That's a true statement relative to Pokemon Go, for example. There is a logic about why you care that this object was appearing in your local environment playing the game. So I think your principal point is good. Whether that's a scalable proposition on the technology as it is today,
Okay, we have to wrap it up here, guys. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists. And a great audience. Thank you for your questions. Thank you.